As the radio host Paul Harvey would say, here's the rest of the story. The story you saw of Jacob and me on the video was just the beginning of an 8-year journey that leads me here tonight. 24 years ago, I was born to a single mother who had many struggles. I don't know who my father is, and the only clear memory of my mother was the night she died of cancer. I was 4 years old, and my mother went to bed as I was watching cartoons. I woke up to the sound of unfamiliar voices in the house, and sometime between the last cartoon and the strange voices in the house, my mother had died. My aunt was not ready for more children, and my 11-year-old sister entered the foster care system and eventually aged out at 18. I stayed with my aunt for a little while, but later went to live with a friend of my mother's and her husband. It turned out that he was far from the picture of a godly father. I was sent to a foster home, but not with my sister. When I was 13, my unmarried uncle, who lived in Dallas, came for me. My uncle knew that I had been molested, so he was very careful to keep his distance from me. At 15, I began looking for love in all the wrong places. And unfortunately, I found it. Not love, but the wrong place. Soon I was pregnant with Jacob, and my uncle's response was to kick me out of the house. I moved to Tyler to be with my sister, who was in a failing marriage. I went to the Pregnancy Resource Center for confirmation of my pregnancy so that I could get Medicaid. My sister's marriage ended, and she moved away, and I found fatherhood on the internet. I lived there until Jacob was born. After he was born, I went to a parenting program in Georgetown. I attended high school there, but left 2 credits shy of graduation. Jacob was 10 months old when I joined my cousin and her husband, who owns rides, and traveled on the carnival circuit. In a thoughtless one-time encounter, I became pregnant with Ellie by a ride operator. My cousin took me to an abortion clinic, but they wouldn't do it because I was 17 and didn't have a parent to sign. The baby's paternal grandmother lived in England, and he said that I could go live with her. I didn't know what to do. I could not stay with my cousin, and fatherhood does not take pregnant girls with babies. And so, without options, I planned my move to England. With passports in hand, I headed to the airport. But I had been talking to Mary Beth, who was a house parent when I was pregnant with Jacob. She had been cautioning me that maybe this plan was not a good one. With her concern echoing in my ears, I prayed the night before my flight. I told God that if he didn't want me to go, I needed him to show me. The next morning, I boarded a plane and got Jacob settled into his seat. The announcement came that the plane would be delayed. I knew this meant that I would miss my connection. I started to panic because I was 8 months pregnant with an 18-month-old child, and I couldn't stay the night in an airport. The stewardess responded to my distress and helped me off the plane. Somehow, it was a miracle. I soon had my luggage, and I was heading back to my cousin's house. I called Samantha, who did intakes at Fatherheart the next day. She said that my cousin could take care of Jacob. If my cousin could take care of Jacob, I could return to Fatherheart, and they would help me make an adoption plan for my baby. This worked. 8 weeks later, Noelle Elizabeth was born, weighing 8 pounds, 3 ounces. We call her Ellie. During my short second stay at Fatherheart, I completed high school, and the day after Ellie was born, I went directly from the high school to my graduation ceremony. The next day, I placed my precious baby girl into the arms of the most awesome, wonderful people, Mike and Jessica. So, it would be wonderful if this was the end of the happily ever after. But once again, here's the rest of the story. I left Fatherheart and returned to Jacob and Carnival, but longing for a family of my own led me back to Jacob's father. His dad, Joe, was living with his mother, and Jacob and I moved in. That made 6 of us living in a 2-bedroom house. It was stressful to say the least. Joe had a problem with alcohol and drugs, and he became violent with Jacob, who was almost 4 at the time. With the encouragement of CPS, I took Jacob and left. And within days of leaving, I discovered I was again pregnant. I was terrified and almost homeless, and I knew my cousin could not take care of Jacob again. So I called Father Heart in hopes that they would help me. Samantha told me, Bev said no. But God is bigger than that. And Samantha said that I could come and live with her and her daughter Lexi. I was so grateful and ready to let God really change my life. During this third pregnancy, I was able to attend classes and routines of Father Heart while living with Samantha. Living with Samantha was a life-changing time for me. Seeing Samantha consistently walk out her daily life, attending church with her was an example of who I knew I wanted to be as a single mother. God was with me as I began to prepare for yet another painful goodbye. I asked Carol to check with Mike and Jessica to see if they'd be open to adopting Ellie's half-sibling and Jacob's full sibling. Their answer, yes, came back quickly and reassured my heart. As Susie's birth drew near, I was conflicted with a lot of different emotions. Not about the placement, I knew that was right, but about letting it go again. It was almost too painful to think about. Susie arrived December 11th, 2008, weighing 6 pounds, 12 ounces. The doctors handed her to me, and I noticed immediately that something was wrong with her hands and feet. And then they swooped her away from me. It turns out that she had amniotic gland syndrome, which basically means that fibrous glands in utero broke free and were floating in the amniotic fluid. Her fingers had become entangled, and some of them were underdeveloped and fused together. And also 2 of her toes were. I was overwhelmed. My baby needed me. How could I let her go? But I knew this was not a surprise to God. I asked Carol to take close-up pictures of her imperfection and send them to Mike and Jessica. I knew in that moment, if they didn't want her, I was going to parent her. When they got Susie's picture, Mike said, I know the pictures are of her hands and feet, but I just can't stop staring at how beautiful she is. At that time, they were living in Germany in the military, where Mike was serving as an emergency room doctor. 5 days later, they arrived, and Mike immediately took charge, as we all attended numerous doctor's appointments together. Mike translated Susie's prognosis to me and Jessica, and what could be expected in Susie's future. Susie spent her first Christmas with Jacob and I, and then 2 days later, she went home with Mike and Jessica. I have learned much through the ministry aspects of Living Alternatives, from receiving pregnancy confirmation at the PRC, living at Father Heart once, graduating from Father Heart's on-site charter school, and experiencing aftercare twice. Today, Jacob and I live in a little house on the Father Heart property. I am in nursing school and on the honor roll. I am looking forward to graduating as a registered nurse next year. And I am very much like the children of Living Alternatives that they now help through the foster care system. I was once one of those children, and God has guided me to Living Alternatives, a place where people love me, believe in me, and encourage me in my walk with Jesus. My cousin died of cancer, and my uncle is a struggling alcoholic. My sister lives in Tyler, but unfortunately, her life growing up in the system remains in shambles today. I'm thankful to God first, and then to all the staff, and then to you for your part in making this ministry what it is, so that they can help one like me.